Roland sat quietly on the small balcony of his home on the peaceful planet of Vera. The twin suns were setting, casting a golden glow over the rolling hills and silver rivers below. After decades of adventure and exploration, he had chosen this calm life far from the crowded colonies and dangerous missions. He spent his days tending gardens, repairing old starships for neighbors, and enjoying the quiet rhythm of life. He thought he had left excitement behind until the message arrived. A royal envoy had come from the Emperor of the distant alien Empire, bearing an official invitation. Roland frowned as he read it. The Emperor's words were simple, yet challenging. A dragon of the royal stables has been broken. It has not been tamed by any human in history. All who try have failed within 5 minutes. We invite you, Roland of Earth, to attempt what none have succeeded. The letter also included a portrait of the dragon, a massive creature with jagged, multicolored scales and glowing eyes that seemed almost alive. Its wings were partially torn, and its claws had been bound in metal bands. The dragon's expression was wild and furious, a creature full of rage, fear, and pain. Roland leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. Broken, huh? That's a strong word, he muttered to himself. But deep inside, a spark of curiosity and challenge lit up. The story of the Emperor's dragon was known across several star systems. No human had ever lasted 5 minutes near it. Those who tried were injured, thrown from the arena, or chased away in panic. Most attempts ended in chaos. Even the best trained human handlers had failed. And now, this retired explorer, this peaceful old man, was being asked to try. Roland shook his head and laughed softly. Maybe they want me to fail, or maybe they finally need someone who doesn't panic. The envoy had arrived in a gleaming silver craft with hovering platforms and silent engines. They had explained the rules. The dragon was in a special arena within the Imperial Palace. Roland could attempt to tame it, earn the Emperor's favor, and receive a reward beyond imagination. But failure would be public, and the humiliation would be shared across the Empire still. The challenge was irresistible. 2 days later, Roland arrived at the Imperial Palace. The architecture was unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall towers that shimmered like crystal, floating platforms, and gardens that glow with bioluminescent plants. The palace stretched into the sky, and the sound of water falling from floating fountains filled the air. He was led through massive hallways by the palace envoy, a tall alien named Veller, whose skin shimmered with faint green patterns. Veller explained the situation as they walked. This dragon is unlike any other. It has been broken by harsh training, cruelty, and neglect. It is feared even by our strongest soldiers, Veller said, his voice steady but serious. Most humans do not last 5 minutes. You must be careful. Roland nodded. I understand. But fear is not my problem. I prefer calm and patience. They reached the arena, a massive circular space surrounded by floating platforms where the Emperor and the court would watch. In the center lay the dragon, chained at its claws and wings, but clearly restless. Its eyes glowed like molten fire, and it hissed as it twisted and thrashed. Every movement shook the ground, sending small rocks skittering across the floor. Roland took a step closer, observing silently. Most humans would have approached with weapons, but Roland carried nothing but a small satchel with food, water, and a simple stick to gesture with. He noticed the scars on the dragon's wings, the uneven scales, and the tension in its muscles. This was not a mindless beast. It was intelligent, confused, and hurt. The first attempts had already been made. Roland watched the records displayed on floating holograms. Humans tried shouting, forcing, or scaring the dragon. All failed. One man barely lasted 30 seconds before the dragon leaped at him, snapping jaws inches from his face. Another tried to ride it but was thrown violently. Breaking both arms, Roland studied carefully. It's not just strong, he muttered. It's scared. It doesn't understand humans. That's why it fights. The Emperor entered, tall and regal, with shimmering robes and a crown that seemed to float above his head. He looked down at Roland and the dragon, his expression unreadable. You're Roland of Earth? The Emperor asked, His voice echoed through the arena. Many humans have tried and failed. Why should this one succeed? Roland bowed slightly. Because I do not fear. I do not try to dominate. I will listen and observe first. Only then will I act. The Emperor raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Very well. Begin. Roland stepped into the arena. The dragon hissed and reared back, wings flaring. Smoke escaped its nostrils. Other humans would have panicked, but Roland took a deep breath and kept his movements slow and deliberate. He did not shout or rush forward. He crouched slightly, speaking softly in the universal human tones he had practiced for decades. Words the dragon could not understand, but the calm energy would reach its senses. The dragon tested him immediately. It swiped a claw near his shoulder. Roland stepped back just enough to avoid harm, his eyes never leaving the dragon. He noticed something subtle, a flicker of hesitation in its eyes, a micro-movement in its body. The dragon was observing him, curious. Minutes passed. The palace court murmured. The Emperor watched with a mix of skepticism and interest. Roland didn't rush. He sat on the ground, remaining calm. Slowly, he extended his hand, not to touch, but to show he meant no harm. The dragon paused, sniffed the air, and tilted its head. It was a small victory, but it was enough. Roland spoke quietly. I know you're hurt. I know you've been treated badly. I'm not here to fight you. I just want to understand you. The dragon's hissing lessened slightly. Its tail twitched, but not aggressively. It seemed attentive. Roland smiled faintly. For the first time, he saw a spark of recognition in its eyes, not fear, not rage, but awareness. This was only the beginning. The challenge had been accepted. But the real journey, the journey to tame a broken dragon that no human had survived for 5 minutes, was just starting. Roland stood slowly, meeting the dragon's gaze without fear. Let's begin, he whispered, and the dragon blinked slowly, almost as if answering. The palace court held its breath. Everyone knew that what came next would either be a historic success or the next legendary failure. The morning sun rose over the imperial palace, casting soft light across the shimmering towers and floating gardens. Roland stood at the edge of the dragon arena, watching the massive creature stir in its chains. Its scales glittered with shades of violet and blue, and every breath it took sent smoke curling into the air. The palace had quieted around him. Even the usual hum of hovering servants and attendants seemed to pause as the dragon's gaze followed his movements. Roland knew this was no ordinary creature. He had faced dangerous beings before, wild predators, aggressive alien beasts, but none like this. The dragon's strength was undeniable, but it was not just brute force that made it dangerous. It was intelligence, cunning, and fear that had been twisted into anger over years of harsh treatment. He walked slowly along the edge of the enclosure, careful to stay in the shadows cast by the towering columns. The dragon's eyes followed him, tracking every step. Its tail lashed against the floor, sending small stones bouncing across the arena. Yet it did not charge. That was a small victory in itself. Veller, the tall green pattern envoy, floated beside him. Most humans would have tried to attack or ride it by now. Veller said quietly, Your patience is unusual. Do you really believe you can succeed? Roland smiled faintly. Success doesn't come from force. It comes from understanding. I can see that it's not angry, it's scared, and it won't fight someone who doesn't threaten it. Veller nodded, impressed despite himself. Many humans have failed because they did not see that. They assumed a broken creature was mindless. They underestimated its mind. Roland crouched low and extended a hand toward the dragon, though still keeping a safe distance. He spoke in a calm tone, letting the vibrations of his voice carry across the arena. The dragon hissed, flames flickering at the edges of its mouth. But it didn't move toward him. Instead, it paused, observing. Its head tilted, and one claw tapped the ground in curiosity. Good. Roland whispered, You're paying attention. For the next hour, Roland did not approach closer. He sat quietly on a raised stone platform, studying the dragon's movements. He noticed small things, the way it shifted its weight, how it moved its tail when curious or anxious, and the subtle flick of its wings when irritated. Every gesture told a story. Unlike humans, the dragon did not respond to words alone. It responded to energy, confidence, and consistency. Roland moved slowly, never sudden, never threatening. He offered small pieces of dry meat from his satchel, placing them on stones nearby. At first, the dragon hissed and swiped at them. Then, after several minutes, it cautiously took a piece. Retreating quickly afterward, a small step, Roland said softly, but a step forward. The emperor observed from above, seated on his floating throne. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, followed every movement. The court whispered among themselves. Many doubted that a human could succeed. Some had wagered against Roland entirely, convinced that this attempt would end in chaos like the rest. Yet, the dragon seemed different today. Its movements were less erratic. It was still defensive, still powerful, but it was watching Roland rather than attacking him blindly. Roland stood slowly, moving closer by mere inches. The dragon's tail lashed, warning him. But he stopped and waited. He noticed the creatures, breathing fast and uneven, a sign of stress. He did not push further. Instead, he mimicked its slow, deep breaths, showing calm. Veller floated near him again. "I've never seen a human approach it like this," he said. "Your calmness, it is unusual." Roland nodded. It senses fear and aggression. If you show neither, it can begin to trust. Hours passed, and slowly, something remarkable happened. The dragon's claws, once tightly planted and ready to strike, relaxed slightly. Its wings, partially tattered and chained, lifted and lowered with a more natural rhythm. It even let out a soft, low rumble, a sound not of anger, but of curiosity. Roland took another careful step. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said quietly. "I want to understand you. You don't have to trust me yet. Just watch me." The dragon watched him, tilting its massive head. Its eyes glowed with intelligence, and for the first time, there seemed to be a spark of connection. It was a dangerous spark, fleeting and uncertain, but it was there. The emperor's court grew restless. Some whispered that Roland was wasting time. Others began to notice the dragon's subtle changes and leaned forward, intrigued. The emperor himself said nothing, simply watching with a steady gaze. Roland pulled out a small stick and tapped it lightly on the ground. He made slow, deliberate movements, drawing patterns in the dirt. The dragon followed the movement with its eyes, head, and eventually a claw. It was testing, experimenting, and responding in a small way. Roland's heart lifted slightly. This was progress. "Good," he murmured. "You are learning to observe, not react. That is the first lesson." He did not attempt to touch the dragon yet. That would come later. For now, he focused on presence, patience, and observation. He stayed in the arena until the sun set, moving carefully, feeding small amounts of food, and speaking in soft tones. By the end of the day, the dragon no longer hissed or snapped at him. It remained tense, but not aggressive. It had begun to understand that this human was not a threat. As Roland left the arena, Veller floated beside him. "You have accomplished what others could not," Veller said quietly. "You have survived more than 5 minutes, and you have gained its attention. That is no small feat." Roland shook his head. "This is only the beginning. Attention is not trust. Understanding is not taming. But it is a start." That night, back in his quarters, Roland reviewed his observations. The dragon's movements, reactions, and subtle gestures formed a complex pattern. He realized that brute force, fear, or punishment would never succeed. Only patience, empathy, and calm intelligence could unlock the creature's cooperation. The retired human smiled quietly. After all these years, he had found a challenge worthy of his skills, not one of strength, but of mind, heart, and courage. Tomorrow, he would return to the arena. Tomorrow, he would attempt the first real connection, the first step toward taming the emperor's broken dragon, and this time, he was ready. The next morning, the arena was bathed in the soft glow of Vera's twin suns. Roland returned, carrying only a small satchel of dry meat and a simple rope loop, not as a weapon, but as a tool to show control without force. The dragon stirred. Immediately as he entered, its glowing eyes locking onto him. The creature had not forgotten yesterday. It remembered his calmness, his patience, and the way he had moved without fear. Roland took a slow step forward and knelt, keeping his gaze. Soft, the dragon hissed, flames flickering at the edges of its mouth, but it did not charge. It tested him with a twitch of its tail and a sharp snap of a claw near his shoulder. Roland flinched just enough to show awareness, but did not retreat. He knew the dragon was measuring his reactions, looking for fear, aggression, or hesitation. I understand you, Roland whispered, his voice barely audible over the dragon's low rumble. I see your pain, and I do not wish to add to it. The dragon's head tilted slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of his words. Roland slowly offered a piece of meat on the ground. The dragon approached cautiously, sniffed the offering, then backed away, slowly, inch by inch. It began to eat without snapping or lunging. Roland smiled faintly. This was the first true sign of trust. Not fear, not domination, but choice. The dragon had chosen to eat while he was present, a small but significant step. He spent the next hour moving carefully around the dragon, watching its reactions. Every flick of the tail, every hiss, and every subtle shift in posture told him more about its personality. He noted its preferred distances, its triggers for aggression, and the signs that showed curiosity rather than anger. Finally, he decided. It was time for the first test, the first attempt to bridge the gap between distance and connection. Roland took a deep breath and slowly extended his hand toward the dragon's snout. His movement was deliberate, calm, and unhurried. The dragon froze, eyes narrowing, claws digging into the ground. It hissed, smoke curling from its nostrils. Roland spoke softly. I am not here to harm you. You can pull back if you want. You are in control. The dragon stared at him for a long moment, its massive head tilted, and a low rumble vibrated from its chest. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it leaned forward and sniffed Roland's outstretched hand. The retired human remained still, letting the creature make the choice. Then, something remarkable happened. The dragon nudged his hand with its snout, not aggressively, but as a test. Roland let out a quiet breath of relief. He did not pull back. He remained calm, letting the dragon feel that he would not react with fear or force. You are learning, Roland whispered. Step by step, we will understand each other. The palace court, watching from above, murmured in amazement. Many had not expected any progress after yesterday, yet here was the dragon, tentatively interacting with a human. Even the emperor leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he observed the subtle exchange. Roland spent the next few hours moving slowly, testing the dragon's limits. He offered food, spoke softly, and made careful gestures with the rope loop, never using it to threaten, only to guide or signal. The dragon responded with caution, but began to follow his movements, matching its steps with his. Occasionally, it would snap or hiss, but Roland responded only with calm patience, never anger. By midday, a small breakthrough occurred. Roland had placed the food in a line, creating a path from one side of the arena to the other. The dragon, hesitant at first, began to walk along the path, taking the food while staying aware of Roland's presence. Each step was a victory. Each cautious move toward him was a sign of trust forming. Veller floated near the arena's edge, whispering to a nearby courtier, I have never seen a human approach it with such patience. Others would have used force, and it would have ended badly. Roland ignored the whispers. His focus was the dragon. He understood that trust could not be rushed. A single misstep could undo hours of progress. Late in the afternoon, he decided to attempt something daring, the first physical approach beyond food. He stepped closer, slowly, until he was only a few feet from the dragon's massive head. He crouched, keeping his posture non-threatening, and extended a hand toward its side. The dragon tensed but did not move away. It sniffed, then pulled back slightly. Roland waited. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, the dragon allowed him to touch the base of its neck. A spark of connection passed between them, a fragile, silent agreement that this human meant no harm. Roland's heart lifted. This was more than survival. This was a real beginning of a bond, something no human had achieved before. But the dragon was not done testing him. Suddenly, it lifted a wing and swung it violently toward Roland. He rolled to the side. Avoiding contact, the dragon hissed, flames flicking from its mouth. It was a test of question. Are you ready for me, or will you run? Roland stood slowly and spoke softly, matching the dragon's energy without fear. I am ready. I am not afraid. The dragon's tail lashed again, then paused. It sniffed the air, studied him, and slowly lowered its wing. The first real sign of respect had been given. Roland nodded, understanding the silent message. As the suns began to set, Roland retreated from the arena, giving the dragon space. He did not push for more progress. He knew was fragile. He had survived the first real test, and the dragon had begun to accept him as something different, not a threat, not an enemy, but a presence to be considered. Viller met him outside the arena. You have gone farther than anyone has before, he said quietly. Tomorrow will be more challenging. The dragon will test you in new ways. Roland smiled faintly. I am ready. This is not just about survival. This is about understanding, and I am patient. That night, Roland recorded every detail he had observed, the dragon's reactions to proximity, sound, touch, and movement. He studied its breathing patterns, its body language, and even the subtle flicks of its glowing eyes. Each observation was a piece of a puzzle, a map to trust, and a guide for the next steps. He slept lightly, knowing that the dragon was clever and strong. The real challenge had only just begun, but for the first time, he felt a spark of hope, the spark that maybe, just maybe, a human could succeed where all others had failed. And the dragon, somewhere in its enclosure, lay down quietly, its glowing eyes watching the retiring human, curious, cautious, and perhaps just a little willing. The next morning, the arena was alive with anticipation. The Emperor had ordered a larger audience, curious to see if Roland, the retired human, could continue his progress. Floating platforms were filled with alien nobles, soldiers, and scholars. Whispers of doubt mingled with curiosity, yet Roland's focus remained only on the dragon. The creature itself paced restlessly in its enclosure. Its scales glimmered in shifting hues, wings twitching with tension. Though it had accepted Roland's presence yesterday, it was far from tame. It would test him. That much was certain. Roland approached slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. He carried no weapons, only a satchel with food and a simple stick. The dragon lifted its head and hissed, but Roland did not flinch. He lowered himself slightly, hands open, showing no threat. You will not scare me, he whispered, his voice steady, and I will not hurt you, but I will ask you to try. The dragon's eyes glowed, intelligent and calculating. Then it lunged not at him, but at the food placed just beyond him. It snapped the morsel up and retreated. Testing boundaries once again, Roland remained still, observing every twitch of its tail, every flare of its wings. Good, he said quietly. You are learning to think. That is the first step toward trust. Today, Roland planned to take a bigger step. He wanted to test the dragon's reaction to guidance, not by force, but by suggestion. He set up a series of markers in the arena, small stones arranged in a path, and placed food along the path. The idea was simple. If the dragon could follow the path under his direction, it would show that it could begin responding to his guidance. At first, the dragon refused. It hissed, spun, and lashed its tail, knocking some of the stones aside. Roland did not panic. He stayed calm, crouching low and speaking softly. Slowly, he took a step toward the first stone, extended a hand, and nodded gently. The dragon's eyes followed him. Hesitation. Then, with a careful movement, it stepped toward the first stone, sniffed, and picked up the food. Roland's heart lifted. Yes, he whispered, step by step. That is all it takes, the palace court murmured. The Emperor leaned forward, intrigued. Many of the audience had expected the dragon to act aggressively, but instead, it followed a cautious path, guided only by presence and calm direction. The test continued. Roland moved along the path, guiding the dragon with subtle gestures and soft commands. It was not perfect. The dragon hesitated, turned suddenly, and snapped its tail dangerously close to Roland. But each time, he remained calm, showing no fear. The dragon adjusted its movements, slowly learning to follow his guidance without fear of punishment. Hours passed. The dragon's movements became more coordinated, more responsive. It began to look to Roland for direction rather than acting purely on instinct. A silent bond was forming, fragile but real. Then came the ultimate test for the day. The human attempted to touch the dragon's wing. Its wings were partially damaged, and the area was sensitive. Many humans would have avoided it, fearing injury, but Roland knew this was necessary. Touching the wing would signal trust and acceptance. He approached slowly, one hand extended. The dragon hissed and raised a wing, flaring its scales. Roland did not move back. He spoke softly, his tone calm and inviting. Slowly, the dragon lowered the wing slightly. He reached out and touched it lightly, feeling the rough, scarred texture beneath his fingers. The dragon shivered, then relaxed slightly. "Good," Roland murmured. "You are learning that I will not harm you." It was a small victory, but significant. The dragon had allowed direct contact, something no human had ever achieved. The palace audience gasped, and whispers of amazement spread quickly. Even the emperor's expression softened slightly, a glimmer of respect appearing in his eyes. Roland spent the rest of the day working with the dragon, combining food, gestures, and calm presence. Occasionally, the creature tested him, snapping its tail or hissing loudly. Each time, he did not retaliate. Instead, he showed patience, matching its energy without force. Slowly, the dragon began to anticipate his movements, responding to gestures even before food appeared. By evening, a remarkable thing happened. The dragon lay down near Roland as he crouched on the arena floor. It rested its massive head on the ground and allowed him to approach within a few feet. It was not yet tame. It could turn aggressive in an instant, but it was beginning to see Roland as an ally rather than a threat. Valor floated near the arena, impressed. "It is learning from him. That is something no human has ever accomplished." Roland nodded, tired but satisfied. "It is learning that I am not its enemy. Tomorrow, we will try movement together. I will ask it to follow me across the arena." That night, Roland reviewed his notes carefully. Every flick of the tail, every eye movement, every hesitation told a story. He realized that the dragon's aggression was never random. It was a language of fear and pain. By listening, observing, and responding without fear, he had begun to understand it. The dragon, somewhere in its enclosure, watched the human depart. Its glowing eyes reflected curiosity, intelligence, and perhaps the beginnings of respect. For the first time, it seemed to consider the human not as an intruder, but as a presence worth observing. Roland smiled faintly as he lay down to rest. The path ahead would not be easy. The dragon would continue to test him in new ways, unexpected, unpredictable, and sometimes dangerous. But for the first time, he felt a real connection. He had passed the first true test, and tomorrow promised the next step: movement, cooperation, and the beginning of a partnership that no human had ever achieved. The retired human understood something vital: patience, empathy, and intelligence were stronger than fear, aggression, or brute force. The dragon was not broken beyond repair. It was simply misunderstood, and he, Roland, was beginning to show it a better way. The arena was alive with tension that morning. Word of Roland's progress with the Emperor's dragon had spread quickly through the palace. Aliens of all shapes and sizes gathered on the floating platforms, whispering to one another, eyes wide with curiosity. Some were skeptical, others hopeful, but all were eager to see if a human could truly tame the feared creature. The dragon itself was restless. Its massive wings twitched, sending gusts of warm air across the arena floor. Its glowing eyes followed every movement of Roland, measuring, calculating, deciding what to do next. It had tolerated him, observed him, and even allowed gentle contact, but it had not yet submitted. The final challenge loomed. movement. Today, Roland planned to guide the dragon across the arena without force. It would be a true test of trust and cooperation. If the dragon refused, it could end violently. But Roland understood that patience, calmness, and intelligence were his greatest allies. He stepped into the arena slowly, keeping his hands visible and his voice soft. "We will move together today," he said quietly. "Follow my lead, and you will not be harmed." The dragon hissed and lifted its wings, testing him immediately. Roland remained calm, crouching low to show he posed no threat. Slowly, he extended a hand, pointing toward the first marker in the arena. The dragon paused, then took a careful step forward. Its massive claws pressed into the ground, leaving shallow marks. The audience gasped. This was new. The dragon, once untamable, was responding to a human's gesture without aggression, encouraged. Roland walked slowly along the path he had set up, his voice calm and steady. "This way," he murmured. The dragon followed, matching his pace. Each step was careful, deliberate, a test for both of them. Occasionally, it hesitated, flared its wings, or snapped its tail. But Roland responded only with calm patience, guiding without force. Halfway through the arena, the dragon stopped abruptly. Its eyes glowed bright, and it let out a sharp hiss. It was testing him, challenging his patience. Searching for fear or weakness, Roland froze, standing perfectly still. "You are learning to think, not react," he whispered. "I am not afraid." The dragon watched him for several tense seconds. Then, slowly, it took a step forward, allowing him to continue guiding it along the path. The palace court held its collective breath. Even the emperor leaned forward, intrigued, but cautious. Many had doubted a human could achieve this. But now they watched something no one expected, a human leading a dragon that had been untamable for generations. The true test came suddenly. A hidden mechanism in the arena activated, simulating a danger, a sudden burst of fire along one wall, designed to startle and provoke the dragon. The dragon leaped back, wings flaring, claws scraping the ground. Panic flashed in its glowing eyes. Roland froze, heart pounding, but he did not run. He raised a hand slowly, keeping his voice calm and steady. "It is okay. I am here. You are safe." The dragon hesitated, shaking and hissing, ready to bolt or strike. But Roland remained composed, breathing slowly, showing that he was not afraid. Gradually, the dragon's body relaxed slightly, its wings lowering. It sniffed the air, then took a careful step toward him. The emperor's eyes narrowed. He had seen many humans fail spectacularly. Could this calm, retired human truly control what others could not? Roland extended his hand and touched the dragon's neck, gently guiding it past the simulated fire. The dragon tensed at first, but then moved with him, step by step. It was a fragile trust, delicate and new, but it was real. The audience erupted into whispers of amazement. Veller floated near Roland, impressed. "It is responding to him, truly responding," he said. "No one has ever done this." As they moved across the arena, Roland noticed something remarkable. The dragon was beginning to anticipate his gestures, to follow his guidance without fear. Each step built a stronger bond, a silent agreement between human and creature. By the end of the path, the dragon had walked calmly beside him, allowing Roland to guide it without resistance. Roland stopped and crouched, speaking softly. "You have done well. You see, I do not wish to harm you. I am your friend, not your enemy." The dragon lowered its massive head, sniffed his hand, and let out a low rumble. It was not submission, it was respect, recognition, and understanding. For the first time, the dragon saw Roland as an ally, a presence to be considered rather than feared. The emperor rose slowly from his throne. His expression was unreadable at first, then softened slightly. "This human, he has achieved something remarkable," he said, his voice echoing through the arena. "He has faced what no human could face and shown understanding instead of force." Roland stood, smiling faintly. "Trust is stronger than fear, and patience is stronger than aggression," he said. "This dragon is not broken, it was simply misunderstood." The court erupted into murmurs and applause. Aliens who had doubted humans now watched with newfound respect. Some whispered that perhaps humanity's intelligence, courage, and empathy were unlike anything in the galaxy. The dragon, sensing the shift in energy, lifted its wings slowly. No longer aggressive, but alert and aware, it looked at Roland, then around the arena, then back to him. There was a clear message in its glowing eyes. It recognized him, trusted him, and was willing to follow him. Veller floated closer, speaking quietly. You have passed the greatest test so far. The dragon has accepted you as its presence, its guide. But the final challenge will be even greater. Tomorrow, you must ride it. Roland nodded. He had anticipated this moment. Riding the dragon would be the ultimate test, showing complete trust between human and creature. It would require courage, patience, and perfect understanding. But he was ready. That night, Roland reviewed the day's events carefully. Every movement, every hiss, every response from the dragon told a story. He understood its fears, its limits, and its strengths. He knew that tomorrow would demand even more, but he felt confident. The bond was real, fragile but genuine, and it would carry them through the ultimate test. Somewhere in the dragon's enclosure, it rested, massive wings folded, glowing eyes alert. It had tested the human and found him steady, unafraid, and patient for the first time in its life. It felt a presence worth following, a presence that could guide rather than dominate. Roland lay down to rest, knowing that the next day would mark a turning point. The retired human, once content with peace and quiet, now faced the greatest challenge of his life, not to survive, but to unite with a creature thought untamable, forming a bond that would change the Empire's perception of humans forever. And in that quiet moment, under the twin moons of Vera, human and dragon both dreamed of the partnership yet to come, one born of patience, courage, and understanding. The arena was quiet that morning, the twin sons of Vera casting long shadows over the polished stone floor. Roland approached slowly, carrying only a simple harness, designed to help him ride the dragon safely. Today, the challenge was clear: the first flight. This would test the bond they had begun to form, and it would push both human and dragon beyond anything they had experienced. The dragon rose as he entered, wings stretching wide, claws scratching the ground. Its glowing eyes studied him closely, measuring intent and courage. It had followed him yesterday, allowed him to touch, and moved alongside him. But flight was a new boundary. Roland understood that trust had to be earned again. He knelt before the massive creature, speaking softly. Today, we will rise together. You do not need to fear. I will not harm you. The dragon hissed, smoke curling from its nostrils, but it did not move away. Roland slowly reached up, placing the harness carefully across its broad shoulders. The creature flinched but stayed in place, testing his resolve. Step by step, he adjusted the straps, letting the dragon see every movement. Good. Roland murmured, You are strong and brave. I see it. Veller hovered nearby, green patterns shifting with curiosity. No human has ever ridden it, he whispered. Do you think he will succeed? Roland did not answer. Success, he knew, was not guaranteed. Patience, trust, and timing would decide. Once the harness was secure, Roland climbed slowly onto the dragon's back. The dragon shifted slightly under his weight, wings flexing, claws pressing into the stone. Roland's voice was calm and gentle. We rise together. You are safe. I am with you. The dragon hesitated, then lifted one massive wing, testing the air. Roland adjusted his balance, letting the creature feel his steadiness. Another wing lifted, and finally, with a powerful thrust, the dragon leapt into the sky. The arena floor dropped rapidly below them as the dragon soared upward. Winds rushed past, flames from its nostrils curling in the air. Roland held tight but did not cling too forcefully. He had learned that trust required freedom as well as guidance. At first, the dragon veered sharply, testing his balance. It circled the arena, dipping and rising, feeling the weight of its new companion. Roland stayed calm, guiding with gentle pressure and soft words. Steady, steady, good. The palace court gasped as they watched the spectacle. A human riding the emperor's dragon once thought impossible circled above the arena. Whispers of amazement and awe spread quickly. Even the emperor leaned forward, his stern expression giving way to fascination. The dragon tested him with sudden turns and dives, its wings flexing powerfully against the wind. Each movement was a challenge, a question. Are you ready? Can I trust you? Roland responded with patience and calmness, shifting weight subtly, speaking softly, and letting the dragon feel his presence. After several tense minutes, something remarkable happened. The dragon leveled its flight, gliding smoothly, wings steady, eyes alert but no longer aggressive. It began to respond to Roland's gestures and voice without testing him harshly. The human's patience and calm had begun to earn true trust. You are learning, Roland said quietly. You are brave. Together, we can rise higher. The dragon let out a low, powerful roar. Not of anger, but of acknowledgement. It tilted its wings, lifting them higher, and began to circle more confidently. Roland adjusted his position, feeling the rhythm of its movements. He realized that riding was not about controlling the dragon, it was about guiding it while respecting its strength and intelligence. Veller floated closer, eyes wide. He has done what no human could before, he whispered. The dragon, it trusts him. The audience below erupted into cheers and astonished murmurs. The palace had never seen a human display such courage, patience, and intelligence combined. Whispers of admiration and awe spread quickly. Some aliens whispered that humanity's strength lay not only in technology or numbers, but in understanding, courage, and heart. The flight continued for several minutes. The dragon lifted higher, gliding gracefully above the palace gardens, wings cutting through the air like blades of shadow and light. Roland felt exhilaration, but he remained focused. Every movement, every breath, every flick of the tail mattered. One wrong shift, one panicked reaction, could undo everything. Then came the first real challenge of flight. A sudden gust of wind, stronger than the dragon expected, tossed them slightly off course. The dragon hissed, wings beating furiously to regain balance. Roland leaned with the movement, speaking softly. Steady, you are safe. I am with you. The dragon adjusted, wings steadying, eyes glowing in acknowledgement. Together, they regained control, circling above the palace safely. Roland felt a surge of pride, not for himself, but for the dragon. It had chosen to trust, to cooperate, and to rise higher than it had ever gone with a human before. As the flight came to a gentle landing in the arena, the dragon crouched, folding its wings slowly. Roland slid off its back, crouching low, and, placing a hand on its neck, the dragon leaned into his touch, allowing the human's presence without fear. It was not submission, it was trust. Real, earned trust. The emperor rose from his throne, silent for a moment, then spoke. This human has done the impossible. He has earned the dragon's trust where all others have failed. He has shown patience, courage, and understanding beyond measure. Roland stood slowly, smiling faintly. Trust is stronger than fear. Patience is stronger than aggression. The dragon is not broken, it was simply misunderstood. The court erupted into cheers. Aliens whispered about the humans' courage and intelligence. Veller floated close to Roland, green patterns shimmering. You have done more than survive, he said. You have united with a creature thought untamable. Tomorrow, we will begin training for the final test, partnership beyond the arena. That night, Roland carefully reviewed every detail of the flight. The dragon's reactions, instincts, and movements were a story to be read and understood. He realized that this was no longer simply about taming, it was about true partnership. Together, human and dragon could achieve what neither could alone. Somewhere in the palace, the dragon lay in its enclosure, wings folded, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. It had flown with the human, tested him, and chosen to trust him. For the first time in its life, it had experienced cooperation rather than force, guidance rather than domination. Roland lay down to rest, feeling the weight of responsibility and pride. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, tasks that would test coordination, intelligence, and cooperation beyond anything yet attempted. But he was ready. The retired human, once content with quiet life, had found his greatest adventure yet, not simply survival, but partnership with a creature thought impossible to tame. And as the twin moons rose over Vera, human and dragon both dreamed of the future of flight, trust, and the bond that would change not only their lives but the Empire's view of humans forever. The morning sun bathed the arena in golden light. Today was the final test, the ultimate measure of trust, skill, and partnership between human and dragon. Word had spread through the palace that Roland had succeeded in gaining the dragons. Cautious cooperation. Now, the Emperor had decreed a public trial, one that would demonstrate their bond to the entire empire. Roland approached the arena slowly, carrying only a small satchel of food in his simple riding harness. The dragon stirred immediately at his presence, wings twitching, claws scraping the ground. Its glowing eyes met his, intelligent and wary. This was no longer about fear or survival, it was about trust, respect, and partnership. Today, Roland whispered, crouching low, "We show them what we can do together. You are safe. I am with you." The dragon lowered its massive head, sniffing his hand, then lifted it again, wings flexing. Roland carefully climbed onto its back, adjusting the harness while speaking softly. The audience watched silently, tension thick in the air. Every alien in the palace seemed to hold its breath, with a powerful thrust of its wings. The dragon rose into the sky, carrying Roland with perfect balance. The arena fell away beneath them, the city and floating gardens shrinking as they ascended. Roland felt the familiar rush of wind and the thrill of height, but he remained focused. Every motion, every word mattered. "Steady," he murmured. "Together, we move as one." The dragon tilted, banking sharply to test his balance. Roland adjusted immediately, leaning subtly, letting the creature feel his presence. "Good, yes." Just like that, the audience gasped and murmured among themselves. A human guiding a dragon through flight with such coordination had never been witnessed in the Empire. Even the Emperor, stoic and exacting, leaned forward with interest. His sharp gaze fixed on the display. Roland guided the dragon through loops, glides, and sudden dives. Each movement was precise yet fluid, a dance of trust between two beings of vastly different worlds. Occasionally, the dragon tested him with sudden wing beats or a sharp turn, but each time, Roland responded calmly, showing no fear, no aggression, only guidance. "You are learning to trust me," Roland whispered. "I am not your enemy. I am your partner." The dragon let out a low, resonant roar, not of anger, but acknowledgement. It banked and dipped in rhythm with Roland's movements, matching the gentle commands he offered through subtle shifts in weight and voice. Veller floated nearby, eyes wide. "I cannot believe it," he murmured. "The bond they share. This is something extraordinary. No human has ever achieved this." Roland and the dragon rose higher, gliding above the palace gardens. The wind rushed past, flames flickering faintly from the dragon's nostrils. Roland reached down, brushing the creature's smooth, scarred scales with his hand, reinforcing their connection. The dragon responded by lowering its head slightly, allowing the contact. The Emperor spoke loudly, echoing across the arena. All who doubted the human witnessed this. Trust, courage, and intelligence have united him with a creature no one else could tame. This is the power of understanding beyond fear. Below, the audience erupted into applause and cheers. Aliens whispered among themselves, astonished at what they saw. Some were even inspired, realizing that humans possessed qualities beyond mere strength or cunning. They had patience, empathy, and the courage to connect with the impossible. The final part of the trial was a test of cooperation, navigating a complex aerial course filled with obstacles meant to provoke panic in the dragon. Towers, floating barriers, and sudden gusts of wind challenged their coordination. Roland focused intently, guiding the dragon with gentle shifts of weight and calm, deliberate voice commands. At first, the dragon hesitated at a high tower, wings flexing nervously. Roland spoke softly. "It is okay. I am here. We move together." The dragon took a deep breath, then flapped strongly, clearing the tower with Roland steady on its back. Each obstacle pass reinforced their bond by the time they completed the course. The dragon had moved fluidly, responding to Roland's guidance without panic. It was a sight none in the Empire would soon forget. Human and dragon, perfectly synchronized, rising above challenges that would have defeated others. As they landed gently back in the arena, the dragon crouched and lowered its head to the ground. Roland slid off, crouching next to it and placing a hand on its massive neck. The dragon leaned into his touch, eyes glowing softly, wings folding calmly. The Emperor rose from his throne, his usual stern expression softened into approval. This human has shown what few could even imagine. He has united with the Emperor's dragon not through fear, not through force, but through understanding, patience, and courage. He is no longer just a human. He is a partner, a guide, and a hero in the eyes of this empire. Roland stood slowly, looking at the dragon beside him. "You are brave," he said softly, "and together we can face anything." The palace erupted into cheers. Aliens of all ranks applauded, some even bowing in respect. The retired human had proven that humans were capable of more than others believed. Intelligence, empathy, patience, and courage had triumphed over fear and strength. Veller floated near Roland, green patterns shimmering. "You have achieved the impossible," he said quietly. "You have not only survived, but you have formed a bond that will be remembered for generations." Roland nodded. "It is not just about me," he said. "It is about understanding, about seeing the strength and intelligence in others no matter how different they are." The dragon, massive and powerful, let out a low, contented rumble. Its glowing eyes met Roland's, a silent acknowledgement of trust, respect, and partnership. Together, they had crossed the boundaries of fear, misunderstanding, and tradition. Together, they had rewritten what was possible. That night, as Roland rested, he thought of the journey they had shared: patience, observation, testing limits, earning trust, and finally achieving true partnership. The dragon slept nearby, wings folded, eyes faintly glowing, aware of the human who had proven himself not through dominance, but through understanding. For the first time, the Emperor's dragon was free not merely in movement, but in spirit, guided by a human who had shown that intelligence, courage, and empathy could tame even the most feared creatures in the galaxy. And as the twin moons of Vera rose in the night sky, human and dragon both dreamed of the future of flight, trust, and partnership that would stand as a symbol across the empire, a reminder that even the impossible could be achieved with patience, courage, and understanding. Roland smiled faintly, placing a hand on the dragon's massive neck. Together, they had proven that humanity's strength lay not only in might or skill, but in heart, and together they would face whatever the galaxy might bring, side by side.